Tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, Gand, it didn't even matter. And that's the best transition I have on this Wednesday evening to welcome you to Tales of Praxis. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the late founder of With the Terrible Fate. Not late, knock on wood, in the sense of having departed this world already, although it kind of feels like that on this particular hump day. Grail, my friend, welcome. I want to apologize to you and anyone else who might be tuning in and trying to coordinate their plans on the schedule back and forth. I expected to be able to start on time, but then, oh my God, yeah, buckle up, Grail. You know where we're going from here. Yes, to make a very long story very short, I was basically in and out of the same meeting for my day job for the last 3.5 hours, just about. So I was actually debating whether it would be just more useful to cancel the stream and start on Friday anyway. But I figured it would be good to use the time we had. And I also figured that, as I imagine other gamers can relate to, sometimes at the end of a day such as that, you need a good gaming session. So a pleasure to be here with you. A pleasure to hopefully be tuning in, tuning out, and diving into some close reading of this wonderful text, which can be the best antidote to those sorts of daily grind adventures. For those of you who might be just discovering us, With a Terrible Fate is your online publication home at withaterriblefate.com for everything to do with studying and analyzing and celebrating specifically the storytelling of video games. Tales of Praxis is a series I've been running for about half a year now on the site. Just looking at Bandai Namco's Tales JRPGs, both in streams where we've been playing through them, treating it as a live book club, doing a bunch of close readings, not just of each game in isolation, but also in conversation with one another, and in the form factor of analytical articles published on the site on topics like what it means to be introduced to Tetheala in Tales of Symphonia, and what Kabbalah and mystic traditions have to do with the experience of playing Tales of the Abyss, how Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World helps you to make meaning out of the sins of your past, especially through Regal, and most recently, what I continue to be working on, this comparative study of Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Destiny. So I won't harp on that too long, especially because I really just want to get into things tonight. But I will say it is ongoing. I think I said on Monday that the outline itself was 6 pages. Now it is 13. Grail, I know you're a writer, so I imagine you can appreciate this. But I think this is a fun article for me because, especially with this kind of comparative work, I think so much of it has to do with figuring out the right way to put the pieces together and see the insights that you're looking for in the outlining phase. I'm a huge Lego nerd, if that hasn't come up before on the stream, and I was actually reflecting earlier today that, especially with this kind of side-by-side conversation between very different yet very similar games, I feel almost like I'm building something out of Lego pieces and putting together different parts and seeing whether they fit, and then saying, no, that's not quite right, and disassembling it and trying it again. So there's a lot of that, but with plenty of insights along the way. So I'm actually getting sufficiently deep into it now that I am more excited about it. Not that I wasn't excited in the first place, but also I don't want to spoil too much because I just want to be able to reveal it to you in its final form. But for the benefit of people on the stream, I will say a couple of the fun insights that I've had in working through the outline are, one, I think this is maybe one of those things that is unsurprising in hindsight, but it took me a while to figure out the right way to get into it. Swords are going to play a big role in the comparative study, not just in the obvious sense that you might imagine with Tales of Destiny, given that half of the party is made up of swords, but also in terms of specifically tying together the language of Tales of Destiny with Tales of Vesperia. But then also, I really felt like I made a breakthrough because it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes you'll have an idea and feel like, oh, there's a similarity between these games and I want to feel it out, but I'm not quite sure where it lies or the best way to situate it. And I just, over the last maybe 24 to 36 hours, kind of found, I think, the right way to situate what Tales of Destiny is saying versus what Tales of Vesperia is saying, specifically in terms of how they comment on what it is to enact your will in the world and make choices that don't contribute to some kind of fated or chaotic series of world events that are outside of your control, but rather enable you to coordinate communities to impart certain desires and values to the world in a positive way. A lot of that, like I said, was already in the ether when I was talking about the games being kind of deflationary when it comes to ideas of destiny. But the more I was sitting down and looking at exactly what each of them was trying to say and the way in which their interactions with the player were structured, I felt like, the more you try to put those pieces together in terms of how each of them is talking about destiny, the harder it seems to actually get them in lockstep with one another. But I think I found the right way to do it that shows how they're really not saying the same thing, but are in fact saying like very tightly complementary things. Where if you're thinking about how to act in the world in a way that doesn't collapse your will into events that have preceded you in history, each one of those games gives you one half of a complete picture that can be really empowering. I think, as a player in the game, as someone in the real world, just as much as for the characters in the game. So I'm going to try to do the job now of explaining and articulating that to myself and then to everyone else. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it. My goal is to hopefully get it out before or by my birthday, which is the 19th of this month. But I think it's safe to say that more or less you'll be seeing something material within a week, because typically by the time I get it clearly in my head in terms of what the layout of this is going to be and what the argument looks like, then it's just a matter of really nailing all of the what's the right way to say it, nailing the furniture to the floor, or I guess to continue with the Lego metaphor, using the Craggle to actually glue the bricks in place. Not that I would ever actually do that, but the same sort of thing of really just breathing life into the outline that is already there. So that'll be fun. It'll be nice to go back through all of the little moments from the games and pull out some screens as GIFs or stills or both to use in the article. And I'm excited to chat with you all about it once we have it out in the world to dig into it. Yeah, it's getting the ball rolling, and it's funny, Grail. I mean, so much of it is, as in video games, so in life, and so in thinking about video games. It's a very nonlinear process for me. It's funny, one can play through these games and talk them to death, either with yourself or with other people, like we've been doing on the Tales of Praxis stream, which has been awesome. But then, for me at least, so many of the insights in terms of, oh, that's the right way to put these two pieces together, come to me when I'm sort of freeing my headspace and least expect it. Like I've been making a habit of going on runs, and in the middle of those runs, oftentimes I'll realize, oh, okay, that's what I was not seeing when I was sitting down on my laptop and banging my head against the wall. That's the right way to think about, the relationship between Yuri and the rest of the party, or, what makes the difference between Leon and Ruti, or any number of the other things that you will see come to life in the article. And I am going to bring in Repeat. I am 95% sure, and it is not going to be in a shoehorned way. So I am excited about that as much as anything. Yeah, exactly, Grail. Writing is rewriting, isn't it? As much as anything else. Well, on that note, we had a wonderful adventure in the last stream with Velvet processing her past once again, and with us learning more about Rokuro's past with that long-delayed side quest, which was wonderful to experience. Thank you for guiding the way there, Grail. That was great. If any others come to mind in terms of similarly character-centric side quests, I know we're still looking out for the Norndals for Eisen, but any others will be wonderful for us to dive into. But as the name of the stream suggests, and as we were already gearing up with jokes and memes before the stream even began, I want to get to Endgand. So I say, let's not delay that any further. Of course, we are going to delay it to see our expedition through, especially now that we're in the Vesperia territory. But after that, on to Endgand. Let's see if we can make some progress barreling toward the end of Act 2, because, my goodness, so much has been set up, and I'm excited to see the payoff on the horizon.
Our scout ship has returned.
Literally and metaphorically.
Great. Let's do this one Run Gets It style, guys.
All right.
A new recipe recipe. I've gotta try it.
Bargist paella.
Scout ship departing.
In doing my research for this article, I accidentally spoiled a piece of trivia that you can actually find on one of these islands. I imagine the Tales of Destiny themed one, which I don't think we've discovered yet because I feel like I would have clocked it. But one of the treasures you can excavate is actually the Eye of Atimony, which, if you're familiar with Destiny, that is not the thing that you want to uncover in the ocean. You want to drop that thing back down where no one can find it, or find a way to explode it. So I'm half hoping and half fearing that we will discover that at some point. All right, let's see if we can quick jump here. Right? That's what I'm saying. I'd be like, oh shit, Pandora, why did you open that box? Close it back up. Get us out of here. Let's take ourselves to a port. I think that's a good idea. An Endgander. Wow, you are already reaching, Grail, but I love it. I'm going to be the last one to stop you. All good sea voyages must come to an Endgand. Oh, I was kicking myself last time, I'm remembering, for not restocking on items, and I almost made the exact same mistake at the start of this stream. There we go. Everything in its place. Grail, still not your strong suit even after a full playthrough of Zestiria and basically 2/3 of the way through Berseria. Although I guess Berseria just has the benefit of being in the same world. As we've been bemoaning, it is sadly not so pun-centric as Lila and her antics in Zestiria, which infect everyone. Oh man, I had some great Edna-centric joke earlier today, but now I can't remember it. It was because, I'll tell you why, I can't remember the joke, but the reason it came up was because, surprise, surprise, my dear friend and colleague Dan Hughes, also the resident Pokemon expert and obsessive for With a Terrible Fate, has already played through the new DLC for Scarlet and Violet that dropped like 5 seconds ago. And he was saying that he was being really coy because I'm going to play it too, and obviously we're going to talk about it together, and I'm sure he'll publish something on it. But he said, I guess it's in conversation with the stuff from Sword and Shield in a really interesting way, which is like the English-based region that is the region that is based on England in the Poke world. And so we went on a whole riff about, man, what if Saray were like Ash and he wanted to be the very best and save the world with his King Arthur stuff. So it was a better riff than the way I'm representing it now, but suffice it to say we had some Zestiria and Scarlet Violet crossover going on, which was fun. All right, Lionel Island Wharf. Yeah, see, now this is the worst because part of me also really wants to just detour hard to the Class 4 islands. But this is what I'm figuring. I think my experience with these later Tales games is it seems much more so than in the earlier ones that one doesn't oftentimes get cut off from a lot of side quest content as one progresses the main story. So I figure let's wrap up Act 2 while we're in the heat of, I guess, the approaching climax. It hasn't climaxed yet, I would say. And once that's resolved, then we can take a break, go on some side quest adventures, ease our way into the final act. If we can tear ourselves away at that point, which is always an open question. Hey, Pottery, welcome back, my friend. We're never going to stop talking about Abyss. I mean, I've said this before, but I would also be happy to replay on the stream the Tales games that I've been playing on the side of the stream for Tales of Praxis, and especially for all I've thought about Tales of the Abyss and all we've talked about it even on the stream. That's certainly one that would be on my list. Yeah, I would travel across Endgand, even though that's not a region that I went to in my shepherd's journey. purifying wide. There's something there. The words are left as an exercise to the reader. I appreciate you with the renewed vote of confidence for it, Pottery. You know I would still be down for that. It would be great to put them in conversation. That'll be the new theme. I'll publish this work putting Vesperia in conversation with Destiny, and the take-home from it will somehow just be, what if we were to put Tales of Vesperia in conversation with every Tales game? And you know what? I would be the last person in the world to stop you.
We're coming up on Lionel Island.
We've got decisions. What to play next, my friends?
Should we expect another welcome party waiting for us again?
No. I had the Bloodwings spread a rumor that we were raiding an Abbey compound far, far from here.
As far as plans go, that's better than nothing.
All this cloak and dagger. Give me a good old frontal assault any day.
First mate, sir. There's a ship drifting ahead of us.
A ghost ship?
It's an Abbey ship. Their flag. It's a distress signal.
Understood. Commence approach.
Are you actually going to help an enemy ship?
A ship signaling distress has neither allies nor enemies. That's a code all seafarers abide by.
It's an obvious trap.
Not even pirates would use a distress signal for a surprise attack. Of course, after we rescue a ship, we still strip them of everything they've got.
Obviously. That's also just
If
part
it's
of
a
common
trap,
courtesy.
We'll kill everyone on board. Simple.
A waste of time if you ask me.
You know, Pottery, especially as I get older, I feel like a lot of playthroughs happen in fits and starts, and that's I've almost come to enjoy it because you get to experience the game through more fits and spurts and phases of your life. Where are you now in it, if you don't mind my
The
asking?
Corsair Scourge!
Benwick, do we still have any Salatoma left?
Grail, thank you for
Yes,
that
sir.
key context that two is more than one.
We should have enough on board to treat them.
But yeah, it's never easy. This is why I was saying it was a hurdle for me doing stuff like that in the first place last time.
When I hijacked the ship and made them set sail.
Oh, nice, Pottery.
Teresa!
I would say things pick up pretty rapidly after that, so I wouldn't be surprised if you made progress at an accelerating rate from here on out, for a while at least.
Scourge. But you know, I'm glad we did. Since it brought me to you.
You seriously plan to fight in that condition?
No. I know you've won this one. Use me as you will.
Use you?
Don't bother asking. It's a trap.
Lionel Island is where you'll find Dees. A Therion. My brother Oscar is guarding over it.
We can handle him just fine.
You
Don't be
should
so
know that
sure.
Oscar's acquired a powerful new art. Its formula developed by Lord Melchior.
Yeah, Nibelheim, talk about a classic moment in Final Fantasy VII. Oh my goodness, I'm jealous of you experiencing it for the first time.
Power far beyond its normal limits. The effect is incredible. Normal arts don't even compare. Even were you to win, you wouldn't come away unscathed.
Why are you telling us this?
That's definitely a vibe too, Pottery, I feel that.
The art is still untested and imperfect. There's no
Grail, what do you
guarantee
mean by
it's
that in terms of them
possible.
losing their genre savviness?
I don't want anything to happen to Oscar. If I'm your hostage, Oscar won't move against you. This will afford you a window to snatch the Therion and make your escape.
You're willing to betray the Abbey?
There's nothing in this world that could ever replace Oscar.
This is also a parallel to Dex and Alice, like I was talking about last time.
I know you can't trust me. So don't give me your medicine.
The idea that their relationship at the end of the day is more important than the organization to which they belong, whether that's the Abbey or the Vanguard.
Just save Oscar.
Lady Teresa!
If true, this information will be of use to us. For now, let's bring her aboard and give her the medicine.
Ever the instrumentalist, Velvet. Yeah, Gate 3 is not for me, but I recognize that there are plenty of people
So you're going
whom
to
it is
believe
for.
her story?
And I've heard it's a tremendous achievement, which is cool in and of itself.
Malak's power far beyond its normal limits. Sounds like we might be in for a real fight.
And she said that Melchior developed it too.
Maybe this explains why he was so intent on acquiring that Siegfried relic.
If this is all true, a frontal assault might not be the best idea.
But why do you think Teresa is willing to go so far to protect Oscar?
Oscar is the second son of the Dragonia family, aristocrats with ancestral ties to the Asgard royal lineage. From what I understand, he was sent to the Abbey in the hopes of strengthening his family's ties to the group.
For the good of the bloodline. Happens all the time.
Rokurou knows a thing or two about
All went to
that.
the Abbey, where she's been his constant savior, even if she's kept it from him. So she's another noble too. Could have had an easy life if she just kept in her place. No, Teresa was conceived, outside of formal matrimony, and her mother was not of what you'd call high standing.
Oh, interesting. Kind of like
It happens more
Alicia's
often than you might
situation
think.
in Vesperia.
My mother died, and my father's wife never cared for me. So I merely served the Dragonia family as a maid. Those were dark, lonely times for me. But Oscar...
Oh, I see what you mean, Grail. Yeah,
Oscar was
like
the only one who called me
being
his
aware of
sister.
the tropes that the various
And
characters are
embracing me
falling
as
into
family.
and things like that.
Does a sister need any
Yeah.
other reason?
There does
not
seem to be a
save her brother?
pretty vivid sensitivity to that oftentimes
So
in
you're
this
back
plot.
on your feet.
My sincere thanks for the medicine.
I can't use you as a hostage if you're dead. Where's the Therion?
Ahead through the Baird Marsh are the ruins of an ancient kingdom. There you'll find the Earth Pulse Point, along with Oscar.
What happened to number 1?
Nothing good.
Lord Artorius took number 1 away from me. As it stands, I'm without the powers of an exorcist. As such, whether I live or die is for you people to decide. Once Oscar is safe, you can do whatever you like to me.
We'll do as you wish. All of it.
Yeah, Pottery, I can see why you would
know
think
this,
that
sweetie. Don't
about
let your guard down
my
for
being
one
interested in
second.
D&D,
I
but
won't.
I don't know what it is. I don't even know if I have the best way to put words to it, but I think for me, I have a lot of appreciation for people who appreciate D&D, but I think my favorite form of interactive story really is like the video game where you have a constructed and clear, relatively linear story with, you know, a sense of clear themes that are expressed by this, you know, authorial design that has already set things as such and established this system through which you're going to progress these characters and avatars throughout the possibilities that are extant in the world. And if you know, if you read my work or you read between the lines and a lot of the commentary that I have, even on JRPGs like the Tales games and how I'm thinking about Tales of Praxis, a lot of the things that I value most about them and the insights that I draw from them come from that kind of structure. D&D is much more collaborative, right? Which is what draws a lot of people to it, I think. But it's much more of a conversation and joint effort between, one, multiple players in a party, and two, the whole of the party and the dungeon master, who is this active, engaged entity, in a way that you don't get in video game literature like we're, you know, talking about and thinking about now. So it's just, it strikes me as a very different form of storytelling and gameplay and everything like that. And I don't know if it's just that I haven't found the right play group or the right campaign to really think my way into that. But it introduces a lot of dimensions and factors and variables to the storytelling that are kind of beyond my main focus and interest in what draws me to video games. Oh no, Grail, that's such a lame ending to that story. I was really excited for you. I'm sorry about that. Got to find different friends. Not that you need to replace your friends, but just find a different group and take them to the woods to do it. That is lame. Yeah, and I mean, pottery, we could have a whole longer conversation about this because obviously there's a sense of conversation between, you know, like the universe of choices and things that are being expressed by kind of what a literary theorist like Wayne Booth would call the implied author of the video game, even beyond the literal biographical author who you know may or may not have wanted to express anything in the game that he or she created, and the person who's playing it. But that implied author is much more of a like a fixed semantic point than a literal flesh and blood person who is reacting to every one of your choices or questions and kind of changing the contours of the game and universe as you go. So I think they're conceptually distinct things. But certainly there is a kind of conversation that goes on between an authorial entity and the person engaging with the literary work in video games too. I certainly wouldn't dispute that.
This is an Abbey encampment. No one's stationed here now.
That's a good way of thinking about it, Grail.
From
You
what
know,
I could gather,
it's typically
it
a
will be
losing battle to try to
approximately
bully
10
people into
days
being
before Patrol's
open-minded in my
satisfied.
experience
That's more than
too.
enough time to find the Therion and get it off the Earth Pulse.
We can rest here too. No need to rush things. We'll find the Therion, but let's do it right.
Yeah, it is one of the role-playing games, if not the role-playing game. So definitely games of pretty much every variety in the modern age owe so much to it. And we should all tip our caps to it for that reason, whether or not we play it.
I'll send a Sylph J if anything comes up here. Have a safe trip.
Thanks.
Still, why would the Abbey build anything all the way out here?
Teresa, what do you know?
This island may be uninhabited now, but judging from the ruins, we can tell that civilization has flourished and fallen here many times. This island lies at a focal point of air and sea currents, as well as the flow of the Earth Pulse. That means that malevolence gathers here too.
Is that why civilization has risen and fallen here before?
It is. Furthermore, the malevolence of those long-dead people still lingers here, lost and unfading.
Even after so long?
The more they prospered, the greater the loss of life.
Normally, this sort of thing could not be ignored. The malevolence here should have been dealt with in haste.
But because the Abbey is scheming to resurrect Inominat, there's no way they'd want to waste such a bounty. Bursting with malevolent juiciness, and no meddlesome people around to cause trouble. There couldn't be a more perfect spot.
If there's one place they'd put a Therion, it's here.
I do like the deafening silence of this town juxtaposed against the quiet roll of the sea. It definitely makes one aware pretty quickly that this is the kind of momentous place on which an act in a JRPG will turn. One thinks even of the devastated town of Camlon before you encounter Artorias' throne right after that in Zestiria. Or even the white antechamber in Artorias' throne before you find Heldolf. Those sorts of liminal spaces I'm a huge fan of in JRPGs. And in storytelling more broadly, but I think JRPGs have a special language for them. I would put it to you, Pottery, and ask you to guess how I feel about those kinds of games based on the conversations we've had and the way I read these things and what I just said about D&D, because my guess is that it's a foregone conclusion how I feel about those games, but I'd be interested in how consistent or inconsistent I seem from the outside about it. I will happily tell you everything I think. I'm just curious. Yeah, I think that's a succinct way of saying it. Not my favorite. Yeah. Here's the thing, right? While we're paused here, because I really do want to be able to closely read this part of Act 2. Back in, God, it must have been maybe the summer of 2015. I was at college over the summer working on some research stuff. I had my Xbox 360 with me. I said, you know, I'm studying video games. I've never played Skyrim. I should sit down and do that. And I logged easily at least 100 hours in Skyrim but I got so exhausted playing it, and I felt like for all that time, nothing had really happened. And I think for me, I wouldn't even I wouldn't foreground it in terms of games that purport to value player agency in the way that you talk about, Pottery, because I get that, especially with Mass Effect. But with something like Skyrim, I think about it more as the canonical example of worlds that are super open and give you a lot of things to do, but things that, in my experience, don't typically sum to a singular cohesive narrative experience with a message that draws on and makes meaning out of all of the time and action that you've taken across the whole of the game. And so for me, that's kind of like it disconnects or alienates like the narrative experience from the totality of your experience with the game. So if you're thinking of it as something like a life simulator or a way to just spend time in an alternative fantasy world, which I take it is largely at least one of the reasons that D&D is so appealing to a lot of people. I can totally appreciate it from afar for that reason. That's not why I come to video games. I come for like the literary experience of it, like we've been talking through on the stream, which is different. Mass Effect, though, I will say I've heard enough from a lot of thinkers about games who think the same way about games and whom I respect to believe that I would find a lot of value in Mass Effect. I haven't played Mass Effect. And I think honestly, like for all of the things that they explain about Mass Effect that I recognize I could value, it's the same kind of cognitive dissonance, or maybe even a ludonarrative dissonance that pulls me away from it. Because I did sit down and try to play the first one once, and it was like the world opened up and I felt disoriented, and I felt like the pull to explore did not, at least naturally or obviously, contribute to my overall experience of the narrative. And I think, that was years ago for me. I think it was an uncharitable read of Mass Effect based on everything I've learned about the game secondhand since then. But that sort of world structure in game design is something that's always hard for me to get into. Yeah, that's interesting about Teresa too, Grail, because one thing that I was actually thinking to complain about was like I was annoyed to not even see her on the party menu as like an escort character, someone who's in the party but not playable. I really like when they do that. Like that was something I was even appreciating about all the way back to Tales of Fantasia, when Archie is brought into the party, but she's not yet Archie because she's been possessed by the spirit of her deceased friend. It's nice to, I think, have those ways of representing that sometimes the party is bigger than the people who are just battling within it and have other relationships to it. There are worse titles to have than weeb. I think a few years ago I would have fought that, but I'm okay to be described as weeb. I don't think my taste in games is categorically weeby, but I do obviously have a lot of appreciation for the Japanese approach to game storytelling. Modded, yeah, there are so many mods. Maybe that's what I was missing. Yeah, it's so funny. Mass Effect is one of those series that even years and years later is still so kind of perennially controversial. But all the more reason to play it, right? Who knows? Maybe we can even do a punchy stream on it sometimes when we're all JRPG'd out for a moment. But that won't be for a while because Tales of Praxis.
It's been a while.
We haven't seen each other since the throne. But that doesn't seem like so long ago to me. Not when I keep hearing so much about you. Eleanor Hume, the traitor.
Since voice acting keeps coming up, I really like Teresa's voice acting as she's interacting with the party.
Was it as bad as you remembered it? Brings you back to when you were an initiate, doesn't it?
Oh, that's really interesting, Pottery. Do you have a sense of what accounts for your change of heart about it?
They placed great responsibility upon you. Oscar should have been the one to take on that role. He had already been selected for it. But you wanted it so very badly, and that sweet, naive man that he is, he let you take it.
That simple-minded sweetheart.
Oscar had already been chosen?
Yes.
The beneficent blockhead Oscar.
He was stationed on that dangerous island where he sustained that awful wound. And now, you accompany the monster that nearly killed him. I feel I have a right to some answers.
My desire to save humanity has not changed. I have simply found a path different from the Abby's.
I don't find that answer acceptable.
I didn't think that you would. I know very well that you offer no compromises when it comes to Oscar.
You're right. I don't. Be sure to inform your new friends of that fact.
Grail, you're consistent, if nothing else, across these
I'm going
games.
to need you all to trust me. That's all I have to say to you.
I understand.
I feel like you didn't mean that to come off as savage, Pottery, but I read that as totally savage. Where you're basically saying, yeah, you know, I got more literate, and then Mass Effect just didn't sit as well with me for some reason. Like I said, I mean, I know a lot of people who love that game, and I'm oftentimes on the same wavelength as they are, but given my own proclivities, I'm going to be the last one to argue with you for feeling that way. I think it's just, here's the thing, right? And I do actually want to dig into Act 2, like I keep saying, but this is good stuff to talk about, especially in terms of Tales of Praxis, because this is one of the things that I keep coming back to and insisting on, especially with the Tales games, and part of what inspired me to do this series. And you'll see it coming up in the Vesperia and Destiny comparative study as well. People, and I do think this is an antiquated view, to your point, Pottery, like there's some subset of gamers, and I think even game designers, who think that in order for player choice to be meaningful, there have to be radically diverging narratives, or you have to be able to tell the avatar to answer at least 5 different ways in every conversation. And I think that's kind of transparently wrong. Once you have sort of a broader and healthier diet of examples of video games to look at, there are so many games where, yeah, you're not able to choose radically different outcomes. Like think of your average JRPG. But if you look at the language and the system of semantics that these games are creating to make meaning out of actions, and then reflect on the actions that you're taking going along this journey as the player, doesn't matter if you're not in charge of what happens in the ending. You're still bringing about everything in the narrative, and a smart linear game is going to have plenty to say about the meaning of those actions. Spec Ops: The Line is a way too easy example, but since we talked about it last time, I mean, it's everyone's favorite example for a reason, right? I think it does a tremendous job of articulating that. Oh man, you were 23 when Mass Effect 3 came out. How long ago did Mass Effect 3 come out? I need to know how that comment makes me feel. 2012. Oh man, yeah. Oh, I feel like I don't even know how that makes me feel. I guess I was 17 at that point, so I feel like a little baby. But brings together gamers of all kinds, doesn't it? Yeah, we've got older, younger, and middle ground here. That's fun. That's a nice cross section of gamers. Pottery, that seems true to your character for everything else you've said in the chat so far. So I respect that. I don't know who that makes me. Would I be? I guess I would be Yuri, and Grail, of course, that makes you Carol. So I'm happy with that. Or I can be the middle ground of the dog who's an old man, but he's also a dog, so he's kind of younger, and I would be delighted to be Repeat. Yeah, I don't know, Grail. I like Teresa, I think, is a cool character because she has a clear moral fiber. So like she will disagree with the party when they take a tack that she doesn't agree with, but she also seems to have morals that are independent of what it is that the Abbey is itself enforcing. So I think, especially having her at this point in the story, it's nice as a kind of middle ground to consider someone who's different than the antagonists, but also different than the protagonists. Also nice to be on this journey where we have at least some hope for saving her and Oscar, as opposed to the just ill-fated sort of almost comic tragedy of Dex and Alice at the end of Dawn of the New World. I mean, I guess your other option is Rita, Grail, if that makes you feel better. She's also always younger than people remember her. What is she, like 15, I think?
They use this island to hold
14, 15?
prisoners. Just looking at this place depresses me. I hate it here.
We can't go carelessly wandering about. This place is dangerous.
I know. Still, from the looks of those ruins, there used to be one impressive civilization here. I can practically taste the hidden treasure.
The punishment for tomb raiding is quite strict, you know.
Think I'd be a pirate if I was afraid of the Abbey?
I won't stop you from looking for loot. But if you get into trouble, don't expect us to save you. Got it?
Aye, aye, sir.
We will be thinking about some actual dimensions of player choice in the Vesperia and Destiny article, though, which will be fun. I talked a little bit about it last time, but
Now here's a fine
especially the notion of optional characters and thinking about different versions of the game as representations of optionality. I think those games give a lot of play there in ways that, if you actually look and pay attention in the Tales games, comes up all the time, right? I mean, even something like Tales of Symphonia, I mean, that is not a linear game. Some people might call it linear compared to something like a Mass Effect, but it's radically influenced by the thematically central relationship system that is wholly built on player choices, right? So I think it'll be fun to foreground and think about those, especially in the context of games that are, in other senses, largely linear. There you go, as long as you're happy with the gameplay, right, Grail? I also think, I mean, the more we've talked about Carol on the stream, and then I've been going back and thinking about him for this study, because I think he is going to be one of the characters who features in it in at least one portion of the reading. I don't think it's like a bad thing to be compared with Carol. I think he really, in some ways, feels to me like one of the more relatable characters, and I think he's also the kind of character that I've come to appreciate more as I've gotten older, and I guess, to steal Pottery's phrasing, a little more literate in just thinking about the various kinds of character that we could see in games, because his is the kind of character where you see him wrestle with and undergo a lot of growth in the scope of the game, and you don't totally see the fruition of the growth, but especially when you know where the game is going and you're playing it a second time, you see Carol and it's very obvious, oh, okay, this is the story of how the next dawn, like, comes to be the next dawn. Like, he's clearly going to achieve everything for the future of the guilds that they need in order to chart, like, a holistic and empowered and unified force in the world that really helps everyone to find the guild that's right for them and makes a positive difference in the world. So kind of, for me, seeing that as the story of, like, how that kind of character comes to be gave me way more appreciation for him in the active time of the narrative. Yeah, that's fair, Grail. Yeah, sometimes we relate to some characters personally and we don't. That's one of the joys of JRPGs that we've been talking about so much. The second half of which game, Grail? I missed the reference. Are you talking about Tales of Symphonia when you say the second half is linear? Oh, he absolutely would. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's actually the perfect comparison, Grail. Yes, I could easily see Carol becoming exactly the kind of leader whom Rex grows up to be in future Redeemed. Yeah, I mean, I think like you were talking about in terms of balancing like the dimensionality of choice with what stage in the game you're at, Grail, it's really like the second half of the game being, I suppose, from Flanor onward, right? Because Flanor is really kind of, that marks the start of the payoff for all the choices you've made in terms of the game saying, okay, we see what you've done, we've seen the adventures that you've been on and the characters you've invested in. Now we're going to show you one particular way of reading the rest of the game based on that interest and investment that you've demonstrated to us. And I think seen through that lens, it feels like exactly the right moment at which to bottleneck is kind of a pejorative term, but I'm going to say bottleneck the amount of choice available in the game to show payoff rather than optionality. A lot of what I talked about in that Regal article, in other words. Which is interesting then, because this is kind of, I don't spend a lot of time looking at this in that article, but I think the follow-up thought to what we're talking about there, which is maybe just as interesting, if not more so, is if you have this particular choice structure within a single game, then when you follow up with that game and add a sequel or a prequel or just a spiritual successor, how do you handle choice in that game in order to make it meaningfully different, but also additive with regard to the original? Because Dawn of the New World superficially seems very different in terms of the sorts of choices it affords, and it does have different outcomes to its narrative based on the choices that the player makes, even up to the final moments of the last confrontation, right? But I think seen through the right lens, when you kind of ask, okay, what is the content and narrative impact of those choices, and how do those square with the kind of choices that we were offered and the reasons we were offered them in Tales of Symphonia, the more I kind of took a step back and thought about it, the more it made sense to me why it would in fact be structured that way. No, I'm talking about the one where like Lloyd's closest relationship is selected. So yeah, the one with the like the night before the party raids Crucius and goes to the Tower of Salvation, and Colette is captured. Because before then, I mean, granted, it's not radical player choice. Again, it's not the kind of choice that you would get in something like Mass Effect or Dishonored or whatever more choice-heavy game you want to choose as your example. But up until that point, you really are still, at least at the Barris level, making divergent decisions that impact the like the comparative relationships that Lloyd has with the other characters in the party. That's my point. It's a leap of faith. That's truly, I think, the best way to describe it. And that is something that I talk about in my analysis of Regal. I think really the best way to think about what it is that the player is doing in that last fight is, you know, the game takes such pains to set up this question of what is the avatar at the end of the day? Is it a monster? Is it a human? Is it something that should be sympathetic or not? And then the ultimate test of that is this gesture that they importantly don't even tell you you're going to be enacting as the player, but this kind of test, especially the first time you play it when you don't know what's going to happen, being behind the wheel of that character, it's like, would you believe that Emil / Ratatosk is the kind of entity that would do this, or does that feel wrong to you? And I think that's one of those endings where, like, especially given how contrastive it was with Tales of Symphonia, it was really hard for me to digest at the time. But it's also one of the things where, coming back to it in the Tales of Praxis context, as I was older and had sort of more distance and familiarity with the series, I really came around to appreciate in a way where I was like deeply grateful that they made a pretty ambitious and different choice for that ending. I think that's the magic of the Mass Effect 3 ending. Everyone hates it for their own reasons, right? And I actually know people, including Dan, who really quite love it and think it's a very meaningful and emotionally salient ending to this series, and that it only could have ended in that way. But I do have to ask now, what are your special reasons for hating the ending, Pottery?
Power number 2 displayed at the throne. Hard to believe he had that hidden in him. Lord Melchior said that number 1 was full of untapped potential as well. If I have the talent to use it.
But I'm with you, by the way, Pottery. I think that's exactly the point I'm hammering home. Your choices from beginning to end in games, no matter how narrow or broad they are, they have an impact, and you can tell a story about that impact and lead the player to reflect on them and make meaning out of them in different ways.
I don't care.
It's one of the central things about video game storytelling to me.
Not as long as I can save Oscar.
I'm the one who hurt your precious brother. And you're asking for my help now?
Yes, you.
That's the most honest reason of them all, Grail.
His face and his honor and his heart.
Still holding a grudge then? Well, at least you won't be able to kill me in my sleep.
With no Malakim, I'm an ordinary woman. How could I threaten the Lord of Calamity? I'm painfully aware of my own weakness.
That's me,
Good.
Calamity Jane.
Out of the way then.
Lady Teresa, Velvet isn't so different from you. She had a little brother,
I know all about the Lord of Calamity, but none of that matters to me. As powerless as I am now, this is the only path for me. It's the only way I can save Oscar.
Lady Teresa.
That does, seen in a certain light, make her the saddest character, because at least all of these misfits and outcasts in our party have each other and are able to band together for a common purpose and accept the perspectives and ethos that each individual brings to bear on the world. And at least the Abbey has this united front to support each other, even if it's support in service of the wrong things. But poor Teresa is so singular in her resolve, but also so resistant to collaborating with anyone who is outside of that perspective, that she is deeply alone in her singular concern for her brother, and kind of unwilling to engage in anything further than the arm's length support that we see at hand now. Oh, I love this. We have two very different threads to the conversation going on. So your critique raises an obvious follow-up question, Padre. Namely, if you were to rewrite the ending and pose a different question to the player that, in your view, is a better summation of the overall trilogy, do you know what that question would be? And if so, why? And this is my favorite kind of interrogation, I'll add, because, like I said, I haven't played these games. I just know enough about them to ask probative questions, so I have no dog in this fight. I'm just curious. Fair enough, Padre. That'll be your homework, and my homework will be working on the never-ending story that is the destined Tales of Vesperia. And we'll both have updates for each other. Grail, I almost want to actually boot you from the chat because that is such obvious bait. Oh man, how could I not stop playing Tales of Berseria and take just like an hour to have a discourse on that? But I guess in order to walk and chew gum at the same time, I will just do the delightful showman's trick of shifting the burden of proof to you and ask you to show your work. Tell me why you think that. So we need to switch the Earth Seal to go further here, looks like. Or if we can even get over there. We might not be able to get over there. Aaron needs to actually stop and read the map for a second. No, we can't get over here yet. Alright. Back in the other direction. This reminds me of, I think it was that seaside area where we were first looking for Grimoire, where I got similarly lost. Or maybe it was a cave. These areas all do feel relatively similarly structured to me for all the differences in ecosystem that they offer.
I don't think we ever know.
Okay, I found this on the web that these areas are due to a relatively similar structure for all the differences in ecosystem that they offer. Check it out.
So I see that reading, Grail. What I would put to you, and I don't have a settled opinion on this because you've clearly thought about it more than I have, but just as food for thought, remember also, like, I understand what you're saying and why you would think it would be self-explanatory, but at the end of the day, Van tries to enact his new vision of the world by taking Lorelei into him, right? So I almost wonder whether, I guess I should flag spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles if anyone is watching and somehow doesn't realize at this point that we do things like talk about Xenoblade Chronicles. But one almost wonders whether, like, not that he wouldn't be on the party side, but whether he might be trying to do something slightly different, like trying to basically take Zanza's authority into himself to reshape the world. So basically, you know, the way Alvis offers Shulk the opportunity to be a god at the end of the game, and Shulk says, no, I don't want that, I want a world without gods. I feel like, yeah, maybe Van would be with the party up to a point, but I think there would also be a point at which he would say, fuck yeah, I want to be the god. I'm going to reshape the world in the way that I think is best. So he might not be a party member so much as a supporter in a certain stretch. Got to look at the map here. Losing my mind. All right, so we can't cross that way. It's got to be one of the gates, I guess, right? Maybe if I switch this one back. Okay, so that's blocked off that way, but we don't need to go that way right now. Let's see if that changed anything over here. So the other way is just back to the beginning, right? Yeah, we don't want to go that way. So it's got to be something over here. Oh, unless... Geez, does one of the switches form a kind of bridge that helps us to reach the ruins on the other way? I guess I could see that being the case. Yeah, I'm experiencing that suckiness in real time. I feel like maybe we do want to go that way that was blocked off by the wind seal, so maybe it's a problem with an earlier crystal. I think there was one back here as well. Yeah, maybe this one? Alright, let's go back and see if that changed anything up here. This does suck. There's no ceiling to the amount you can think about Van. You think we've got it set up correctly now? Alright, I like the sound of that. I feel like it's this way? Maybe? Although maybe not. Maybe now I'm just going in the wrong direction. Let's see if that changed anything over here. Anything? Anything? Oh, god damn it. Oh, for real? Is there a small passageway that I didn't see? On the other side, you mean? Like out the other exit of the main area? This is also, I might say, my least favorite kind of dungeon because we had so much momentum in the story and I was ready to dive into it, and then to have to slow down to a crawl to figure out the minutia of a switching system is not exactly my idea, but that's what I was missing. God damn it. Not my idea of the best cadence. Yeah, Vesperia good, Symphonia good. Even some of the nuttier earlier ones, like Destiny is nuts to figure out, but
what are you brooding over?
but it's interesting nuts. More interesting than just switching switches.
You're not sure whose little brother you want to be, eh? In that case, I assure you I'm the kindest of the lot.
The cruelest, most devious. That's not what's on my mind. There's something I need to say to Lady Teresa.
Something you wish to say? Then speak, number 2.
That's just it. I'm
Are you talking about the
number 2.
block puzzle pottery or something different?
I'm Laphicet.
Because the block puzzle will be seared in my mind
It's
forever.
the name Velvet gave me. It's very important to me.
Something can be important to you?
Yes, I have feelings. You see, Malakim are not tools.
Very well. I shall call you Laphicet from now on.
Thank you, Lady Teresa.
You're kinder than you look, my dear Teresa. Thank you, Teresa.
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
Misunderstand. With so much at stake, I don't want to rock the boat.
Ever the pragmatist. A true disciple of Artorias, I suppose. Even when she diverges from the Abbey, she doesn't so much from their way of thinking. Yeah, I don't remember what its name was, but I'll always remember it was. I'm 95% sure it's Grace's. It's block puzzle for one of its optional areas. Like, truly, it took me being up like until 2 or 3 in the morning in my parents' basement, and I couldn't even tell you how I solved it. I was not mapping anything out. It was just like I had failed at it so many times, and suddenly my subconscious brain just saw the matrix without even being able to explain how to do it and got it in one. So really looking forward to going back to that in my replay of Grace's. Chigo Island! Ooh! Speaking of losing our minds about Tales of the Abyss. Yes, I saw it with my third eye, Grail. That's what happened. I kind of want to keep exploring the Vesperia one since Vesperia is so fresh on my mind right now.
Velvet, tell me what you know about Teresa and Oscar. I want a clear picture of what they can do.
All right. Teresa and Oscar are...
I can give you the lowdown on everything Abby. Lady Teresa and Oscar are the best of the best, even among the praetors.
It's the proper homage to Mew, and I will hear nothing else about it.
100 praetors in
to be adept
He's
at
a
both
sacred
cited and
being. He
leadership.
deserves respect.
Key figures entrusted with responsibility for major cities and institutions.
The fighting part is all we have to worry about. Are they better than you, Eleanor?
Yes, I was a Primus, which is a full rank below them. I could never overcome Teresa's arts or Oscar's swordsmanship in our practice battles.
Great chatting with you, Pottery, my friend. Looking forward to a great Friday stream. It'll be all the better for having you there. It will be at the appointed time. Don't worry.
Appreciate.
Hopefully with more updates on this never-ending study. It'll be worth it, especially for you, Padre. I'm going to make it worth your while as a Vesperia-obsessed fan.
Mastered a new art developed by Lord Melchior. You can count on it being a nasty one.
You really do know a lot about this stuff.
It's a little suspicious.
You think so? Well, I was at the Abbey, so...
Why don't you call him Lord Oscar?
That's what's bothering you? It's because we're both so popular with the ladies. I consider him a rival.
I'm just putting it together now. That must be why Pottery was saying I should include Raven in my Vesperia study, because, as we've now uncovered, he is the Raven of our real-life JRPG party. He wants to be seen. Alright. Now we should have a clear path. If there is any god in this world, by the Empyreans, old and new, please, let that be the end of this misadventure. Ah, yes, the much ballyhooed camping. Well, no worries, Grail. You will obviously be missed, but hope you catch up on the VODs and we'll be delighted to see you back. Hopefully we won't find a way to finish Berseria without you in your absence. That would be salt in the wound for you to be here throughout the entirety of this journey and then miss the finale. But I don't imagine we'll be that quick at getting around to it. Perhaps this is something we can knock down or bridge. Oh, no, it's a geoboard point. I just saw the switch. Am I a crazy person? There it is. We are a fan of irony on this stream, so maybe for that reason alone, it would be worth plowing through the end without you. Nah, I'm playing. Hey, you know what you get with me. I am interested, though, jokes aside, but only for a moment. We'll get right back to the jokes, at seeing how quickly Act 3 goes, because I did notice when I was loading up the save file for the stream this time, the party's already at roughly level 40, and I rounded out my last playthrough at level 56, it looked like, so I don't have a super vivid recollection of how long the third act is, but that made me feel like perhaps it will be accelerating, which struck me as something that would also feel thematically consonant with kind of the cadence of the game up to this point. I do not want you to spoil it for me, Grail, but I appreciate the offer. I think it'll be all the more fun for us to discover it on the stream together. Ah, another beetle. Love it. The Laffy beetle, or whatever he decided to name it. Laphetuscornus beetle.
It's a beetle.
Yeah, a Lionel giant thunder
There you go.
beetle, to be exact.
Different kind of beetle.
Why do they always have such awkward names?
Oh.
I think it's a cool name.
Oh, this is really sad to me.
I've never been able to figure out why boys are so drawn to these things. Didn't you want to see it?
Yeah. Thanks.
When he was little, Oscar was always running around the woods collecting bugs. He'd get so into it, it was never long before he'd trip and hurt himself.
Did you grab bugs for him?
Yes, I thought they were gross. But I was much taller than him, and I had the reach. Once, he gave me a whole pile of cicada shells as his way of thanking me. I just screamed.
I'm sure he just wanted you to know how he felt. I can relate to that.
Rather unusual for a Malak like you to contemplate such things.
It does strike me as the kind of thing that might be intentional.
It's just really hard sometimes.
It's hard for people too. Sometimes it feels insurmountable, and yet we can't give up. Sometimes you just have to say what you believe in your heart, even if you're not good at saying it.
What I believe.
V, hurry up already! What were you two talking about?
Nothing.
It's easy to believe that tethered Malachi might inherit attributes or take after the appearance of the person who tethers them, but also I feel like I might just be projecting the nature of blades in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, speaking of Xenoblade, to Malachim here. I was saying it felt sad to me. I guess it doesn't have to be sad. I suppose you could think of it as bittersweet or what have you, but this idea that it feels like, almost like Laphicet is trying to rectify his past enslavement to this woman and to the Abbey by figuring out how to forge a human connection with her now, such that even if they didn't understand each other at the time when he was being just used as a doll, he can retroactively process and work through that in a similar way to what we saw Velvet do with the events at a ball by bonding with her now. So if that ends up being a positive thing for both of them, I suppose it doesn't have to be sad, but that idea of just trying to come to terms and have a positive relationship with your slave driver and master is a pretty tough pill to swallow, I think. Oh, that's annoying because there was that walled off area, but it was all the way on the other side of the map. Well, we're here. We probably won't come back. I say we might as well check it out. See, Grail, as the words were leaving my mouth, I could already feel myself regretting that. Oh, can we even get back this way now? Yeah, we can. Just have to switch this, I guess. Alright, switch that back. Oh, but then that's walled off? Oh, so we can't even get to that from here. I see. It wants you to do a whole big loop from further than where we stopped in order to arrive back at that place that was accessed by the fire switch. I understand. I don't love it, but now I do, after flailing around for a while here, understand the structure of what they were going for. As a person who has spent a lot of time in his life being taller than other people, I recognize and appreciate that value of reach to which Teresa was referring.
Hey, Laphicet. Found a new stag beetle, did you?
Thanks to Teresa.
Teresa caught it for me.
Take my lines, why don't you?
Those are sharp. Eisen, take a look at this fine specimen of a stag.
Wait, I believe that might be a two-horned rhinoceros beetle.
Listen, you two. If you're gonna get in another fight over this, I'll just say it's a new type of drone beetle.
You wouldn't. You've really figured us out, huh?
Eleanor, you didn't make him say that just now, did you?
I did not. I've made a pact with him as a vessel, but he isn't tethered to me.
A Malak, acting so human.
I used to think that way. Malakim possessing free will just like humans? It was inconceivable. But meeting Laphicet and Eisen taught me the truth. They laugh in joyful times, and cry in sad times. Their stomachs even growl too.
Their stomachs growl?
Now I take it as a matter of course that not only Malakim, but demons and Therions too, have their own thoughts and feelings.
I thought you hated demons.
I certainly still do, but now I feel something besides just hate.
Malakim with free will? Demons and Therions as well?
You must have sensed that in Laphicet, or you wouldn't have caught that beetle for him. When you saw his beaming face, it must have reminded you of when Oscar was a young boy. Am I correct?
This conversation's over.
Gradually bullying her into opening up.
Teresa, be honest. Isn't there something wrong with the Abbey using a dangerous experimental art out in the field?
Oscar's the one who decided to go through with it. Don't presume to know anything about who he is.
I'm telling you, I love it. We've talked about it before, Grail, but everything from instant drinking buddies to little boys arguing over the proper categorization of beetles to competing in fishing games. It's like, well, it's instant bromance, right? But in a way that feels really special and well characterized and I guess unusual for the series. I can't think of that many with that dynamic right off the top of my head. I know what you mean about figurines too. I mean, you know, I'm absolutely just a madman for collecting, and my problem with something like that is like the Tales of Xillia Collector's Edition, for instance. It comes with this Melia figure, which is great and a wonderful thing to add to this Tales collection that I'm amassing to pay homage to the series and to my work in Tales of Praxis. But then, as soon as there's one figure like that on the shelf, I immediately become frustrated that they don't have figures like that I can get for all the characters I care about in every Tales game. So it's like the existence of one makes the absence of all the others all the more present.
Using that art could be fatal. I can't allow Oscar to try it.
Lady Teresa, is something the matter?
It's nothing. I'm fine.
But you looked like you were in pain.
Oh. I was just thinking a bit.
You didn't have time to rest after recovering from the Corsair's scourge. You're awfully hard on yourself, you know.
And even harder on others, am I?
That's not what I meant.
It doesn't matter. I'm well aware that I'm stone cold. But they say a Malak never knows his vessel's heart. I said nothing all those times you snuck off to the library, did I?
You knew about that?
Of course I knew. But I was just letting you roam free like a master might let her little pup. Number one didn't wander about like you did. What makes you different?
I'm sorry.
Well, boys will be boys, I guess. But I was planning on punishing you if that behavior continued.
Punish me how?
You don't want to know. It might wreck your good cheer.
Lady Teresa!
Oh, she left.
She's being. Do you really think she'll work with us?
I don't think she's lying to us. But I don't think she's being entirely truthful either. Look, I know I probably don't have to say this, but...
You don't. I won't let my guard down. If I see anything funny, she's dead. And since she has no Moloch, it'll be quick.
Grail, I've said it once. I'll say it 1,000 times. You are consistent, my friend. See, for me, it's always not quite the same thing as a trophy, but I really, really like being able to get collectibles that are meaningful to me because they're about games that I've thought a lot about or especially published on. Like, I love all the Majora's Mask stuff that I have to pay tribute to, like, the time I spent thinking about and working on that game. Same stuff with the Tales series. Or Elden Ring, stuff like that. I do notice, though, especially because that's my MO for how I collect a lot of video game stuff, how disproportionate the figurines for female characters are versus the male characters. Like, I was not asking for Melania, the figure from Elden Ring. It's clearly been a minute since I played Elden Ring at this point, but that was the figure we got, so there's clearly a market for it. Melania, that's her name. That's how they get you. They know the people who care enough about the game to buy supplemental physical content will care enough to spend more money than they should on it. That's why my favorite things are stumbling upon little affordable, cool, unusual collectibles that I didn't know existed, like the Best of Tales compilation soundtrack that I found in Japan, which I know I've talked about before, which included not just a lot of great songs, but also the pin set that I roll out for stuff like PAX conventions and things like that. Didn't even know that was a thing. Stumbled on it in a store in Japan. I don't know the price anymore, but I'm sure because it was in Japan where I found it, it couldn't have cost me more than 10, 15 bucks. It's great. Still one of my prides and joys of that collection.
Are we ready for this?
Millionaire! Oh no, he's rich! I think that indecision is good though, Grail. I mean, I'm the same way, and for me at least, it just makes me feel as if I'm more reflective and deliberative, so that when I do finally bite the bullet and decide to buy something, sometimes I'll still be impulsive, sure, but more often than not, I'm pretty confident that it's something that I've really thought enough about to know, yeah, I'm really going to value and cherish this in my collection in the long run. Which makes me feel a little better about dropping too much money on those things. There you go. Great minds think alike, Grail. And so do ours. My man! Speaking of the Rokuro Aizen dynamic. I thought that was gonna hit. Oh! Of course, when I try to counter, he misses, and then right after, he punishes Rokuro. Thanks so much. And there's no way this guy has 1,000,000 legs. You can't convince me of that. Where are these millions to which you refer, game? Maybe the thought, if we're being generous, is, I mean, it's clear how rumor and myth influences so much of how this world thinks about monsters and its various inhabitants. So maybe the idea is, yeah, he only has like 20 or 30 legs, but over time, legends of this demon have grown to the point where people tell stories of this worm with 1,000,000 legs. Yeah, that's right. It was meant to be a bonus fight in the Colosseum. I do really like the Therionization, reducing this thing's guard rate. I feel like that is sorely needed in this particular fight. How dare you call for backup? Are you kidding me? Sir, we are having a hard enough time without any of your friends. Yeah, definitely adds insult to injury, Grail. And, as you can tell, I am not exactly the biggest fan of that either. There we go.
Whew. I thought we were done for.
49 grade feels good, though. Tell you that much. Nothing compared to the, like, 250 we got for some fights in Zestiria, but I'll take it. I will not complain. A blob ring! Finally. Blob ring, my beloved. There we go. Oh, that's cute. Does he show up in, is it just in the Colosseum? I don't think... I think that might actually be the one bit of extra Tales of the Abyss content that I missed when I was rolling through it last time for the study. Either that or I've just already dumped it out of my short-term memory. No, it isn't the Colosseum. I remember that fight. I did do that. I think I have a really hard trouble processing and holding the cameo fights in my head for the party members from games I haven't played yet. So I'm sure once I go back to that, having played Tales of Eternia, I will be very psyched about that. I know I felt that way for the cameo fight with Philia after I finally got through Destiny. Finally, I found myself saying, I know you. I have feelings about you. You are a challenging character. Yeah, the group Coliseum fight. I do remember that. Definitely did that. Who else is there? Is there... Do they have Gar there, speaking of Tales of Destiny? I have visions of some archer. That's one of the reasons that I like the way they're going with cameos now in terms of more narrative content surrounding them, because I feel like I get so much more out of the cameos that way, like we've talked about before, but then also because I get more out of them and situate them more in the narrative's context, my memory is just better for them. Like, I'm not going to end up confused or forgetful that Jade and Sophie are the ones who show up in Zestiria, nor that Aizen and Edna are the ones who show up in Tales of Arise. Got it. Yeah, see, I'm already mixing Colosseum fights. I knew he was in one of those. So then who else is in Tales of the Abyss? I'll have to look it up, I guess. Mint and Philia, yeah, okay. I knew Mint was in one of them, but see, I'm crossing my games, because I almost said Mint, but then I thought, no, Mint is in Symphonia. Those two fights especially, though, like, I feel like the Colosseums are relatively similar, they're from the same area, so I don't feel that bad about having mixed them up in my head.
Teresa, let's review our plan before we go in.
All right.
We'll tell Oscar that we'll release you if he gives up his weapons and Malachim. We'll tie him up, collect the Therion, and then head for the docks. Once we're aboard our ship and ready to sail, we'll release you. You'll be free to do whatever you want.
Very well. But I want you to promise me one thing. Promise me you won't hurt Oscar.
That depends on him. I'll defend myself if I have to.
Velvet.
Please, do it for me, too.
If you want to save Oscar, you need to make him listen. Put your own life on the line. You're his sister. Do whatever you have to protect him.
I will. Even if it means my death.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's part of the classic Coliseum party cameo experience. You don't get the full gameplay value of it if they don't absolutely waste you when you're not expecting it at all, at least once. Man, I was so enjoying Teresa warming up to Fee and everything, but now I'm just thinking back to how grossly and entirely utilitarian the Abbey is, and I wonder whether her deep game is to lead the party into a false sense of security and then betray them to try to capture them or do something to serve the Abbey while also protecting her brother. I know, I could tell you had some PTSD about that one, my friend. So where was the water one? Is that the water? I don't... No, that's a save point. I think it might want us to go back using the path we just opened up. If I have my head on straight. I mean, it has the same impact on your psyche that it does physically on the characters who have the misfortune of being hit by it. Oh, it's in the same area, is that right? Well, it shows what I know. I would have assumed that they were going to use the shortcut for the puzzle, but I guess not. Well, thank you, GPS, where the G stands for Grail. Maybe the switch is beyond that wind barrier. Well, regardless, I know. Oh, no, there are two switches back here. Got it. My hero. I suppose while they're right in front of us, we might as well explore the other path too. We've got time. Oh, except, of course there would be two gates. Son of a bitch. Alright, well, if it's important, we'll have reason to go back to it. Oh, come on, there's got to be something there. There wouldn't be a path if there were nothing. Maybe what, just a chest or something without very interesting contents? What did we get? What did we get? Ugh. Bodhi Blastia bracelet! Fantastic. The band is said to amplify the wearer's abilities, but also curses them with an insatiable sweet tooth. Alright, so we've gotten all the special things from Vesperia Island. So let's go to the Cheagle Island. Oh, I almost forgot to read the description. This island, also known as the Isle of the Thing, there you go, is home to a fire-breathing sacred beast that can predict the future. Named Lorelei, or great ravines in the island's interior emit a miasma. Boy, the gang's all here. They really tied in a lot of the abyss to that. And look at that. It's a wonderful composite image of Tipo chasing after Mew when we look at the two islands side by side. Cute. Let's see what there is to see. Mayhap will surface a fragment of hyper-resonance, as you can in Tales of Vesperia. I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. I thought we toggled them. Is there a third switch? What do you mean by that, Grail, where no one knows quite where it is and it has a little bit of everything with no explanation? We got halfway to an explanation with everything we were thinking in terms of the era of the gods back at the end of Zestiria. I think that's something. Okay, but we have to be missing something, because if I switch this to wind, then there's going to be a wind barrier back there, isn't there? Oh, maybe I was just thinking of that one. Maybe that did open the way at the other end. Well, that's one of the reasons that I was curious about something like the Eye of Atimony literally showing up, because if you look at some of these treasures, like what we got in the Critian Archipelago, for instance, right? Like the Bodhi Blastia bracelet, it's not exactly what Bodhi Blastias are on Terca Lumere, right? Like, yeah, they enhance your physical abilities, but they don't actually give you a crazy sweet tooth. That's just a call out to other aspects of the games and like a little Easter egg. So you might be able to spin up some kind of explanation of, oh, you know, they're closely parallel worlds that invoke certain elements of these other worlds without being one-to-one correlations with the worlds we experience in the other games and what it is that shows up here. So I could imagine one talking one's way out of it that way, but that's why I was curious about something like the Eye of Atimony, because if it's literally just the Eye of Atimony, then that's going to make trouble for that explanation. Yeah, I don't see anything that's quite a literal correspondence with something from a plot that I'm familiar with so far. Yeah, it does feel a little off-tone, though. Although I guess a charitable interpretation of the music for me, Grail, would be, you know, things were quiet and reflective while we were setting off and getting to know Teresa and everything in the port of call here. But then as we're adventuring through the area, it really is just kind of like, it's a generic adventure in the sense of we don't really know what to expect in terms of what's going to happen next once we do find Oscar. And so to have just the expectation and understanding of adventure as opposed to something that might be suspenseful in a way that's maybe not warranted because we don't know what exactly is going to happen, I can see it feeling perhaps a little more consistent than we might initially expect. Grail, don't even joke about that. On the one hand, I'm very excited to be able to do a bunch of multi-dimensional comparisons between many titles as we go on with Tales of Praxis. On the other hand, man, oh man, putting all of the right pieces of even 2 games in conversation, like I was talking about at the top of the stream, really rewarding. It's already given me a hugely different perspective on both of them, but oh my goodness, what effort required. It is very different than even using the other games to read one singular game like I did with Arise. In a way that is fun, and I think is going to be a really nice centerpiece for why I think Tales of Praxis as an enterprise is valuable, because I do think, you know, if all goes to plan, the whole will be greater than the sum of its parts, but it's a different kind of work. You'll see. You'll see.
You all know the plan, right?
I'm using you as a hostage to keep Oscar from doing anything stupid. And don't you try anything funny either.
Would you believe she did that line reading in one take?
We will need to be extremely wary.
I will say, I don't know what exactly it is about the battle system that makes this so satisfying to me in Zestiria and Berseria. Grail, you would probably be able to put words to it better than I can. But to me, there's something in these games about the experience of getting a whole cluster of enemies bunched up and hitting them all at the same time with a single attack, like Velvet did with her claw actions there, that is just so deeply satisfying. I mean, you can bunch up enemies in most of these games, but just something about this particular layout. You really feel like you're getting away with something and punishing the enemies. I'm looking forward to it. I can tell it's going to be a centerpiece, but it is a moment from the game that I truly don't remember. Which isn't to say that it isn't memorable, because as I said in the Zestiria stream, I somehow had completely dropped the death of Dezel from my mind, which I'm still not over now. Yeah, for sure, Grail. That makes sense. And nice to be able to appreciate that, even for all of the frustrations that you've fairly voiced about the combat system in other dimensions. Is that worth replacing for Eleanor before we move on? I guess if she's going to be casting spells, might as well. Alright, one more quick save just to tag up. Alright, let's do it. A nice structure for knowing we're coming to the end of the second act, by the way, given that Oscar was also one of the very first people we encountered as Velvet made her escape and set off into the world from Titania way back at the beginning of the game. I love it when JRPGs have nice echoes or bookends in that regard, whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
I knew you'd come, Velvet. Sister!
As plain as day. Now put down your sword and let go of my Therion. If you don't, I'll kill her.
That line got cut too. There've been some weird jumps in the dialogue,
Sorry to do this,
just in these
Oscar.
last couple
I'm
streams.
searching for the truth behind the Abbey's talk of so-called reason.
And your idea of reason is to threaten my dear sister.
I don't know, Grail. For me, Oscar kind of works because he looks so ordinary.
I'm sorry.
There's a sense in which I pity him because he just seems like the little brother who got cowed into a role that he didn't deserve.
All right, I'll put down my arms.
Teresa, get back!
Jesus! To save him from the art, I guess, right?
This is the only way
Yeah,
I can protect
that tracks.
We've kept our end of the bargain. Take him.
Why did you have to give me a concussion,
It
though?
will reflect poorly upon him.
Lady Teresa?
Have you forgotten? You're just a powerless human.
You're right. I am a weak, worthless human. But he has shown me the light, and it shines. My body is receptive to Inominat's power. And with it, I can protect everything I care about.
Oh, is she going to merge with the Therion? Yeah. I should have known that's what she meant by receptive back during the last stream.
She turned into a Therion?
No, she fused with it.
Nicely done, Grail. Who would have guessed all your commentary on her design was just foreshadowing?
Merging with the Therion. Do you realize what you're doing, Teresa?
Trivial sacrifice. I'd do anything for my Oscar.
Talk about an interesting divergence from the Abbey's... Well, from the Abbey's stated principles. They are also the ones who are using the Therions to invoke Inominat, so... I wonder how much this act of Teresa's really is diverging from the activities of the Abbey. And what a cool anti-parallel, too, again, to the... That's a very cool mystic art. I didn't want to talk over that. But what a cool anti-parallel to, again, what Velvet has been doing from the beginning of the game as a Therion in terms of devouring other demons, for the human to instead become like the active party in the interaction with the Therion, and not devour the Therion, but merge with it and take on its power and mutate herself. Really interesting to see the other side of that.
There's no turning back. Not with so much at stake. His future depends on this.
Now, rise, arise, ascending angel!
Yeah, and there are also demons that can be used for a specific purpose in this ritual, right, Grail? So, yeah, they're demons, they exude malevolence, but they also are demons that feed off of malevolence and have this ability to transmit that malevolence to Inominat, with kind of the implicit understanding being that to awaken Inominat would thereby vacuum up all of the malevolence out of the world. They haven't really explained that, and remember, we found the full version of the myth of Inominat, which we haven't had explained to us yet, but that seems to be the understanding. Which is consistent with the Abbey, right? If the idea is that Artorius's model of reason is the means are always justified, if the ends are like a sufficiently good outcome, then of course he would be down to use presumably any number of demons, but especially just a small handful of specially attuned demons, such as these Therions, for the Abbey's purposes. Did we get that last line, the button on the Mystic Art? I think she says, "This is your punishment," which makes sense. I can't quite hear it.
I can't lose. Not here.
Yeah, that makes sense, Grail.
Lady Teresa.
Stand down, or I'll devour you piece by piece.
It's okay, sister. You've done enough.
No.
No, don't look at me. I'm so hideous.
When I was growing up, the only one my mother and father ever paid any attention to was my older brother, the heir. But you, Teresa, you noticed me when they didn't. You looked after me, supported me, smiled for me. I could never thank you enough, my sister.
Oscar.
Now, keep watching over me, Teresa. As long as you're looking after me, I can vanquish even the Lord of Demons. Take a good look.
Talk about a climax.
Is armatization.
I forgot they used armatization in Berseria! But now I do remember that they did that, and I was also overwhelmed then in my first playthrough at how cool that was. Very cool turn. Very cool. And I suppose what Teresa did also was a sort of armatization with a demon, if you want to think of it that way. A nice yin and yang there, armatizing with a Malik and with a Therion. Really makes you sympathize with all the enemies that we pummeled as armatized Saray and Rose back in Vesperia, huh? I believe it. I'm having a hard enough time as it is. He's too fast for Rokurou to counter effectively. It's annoying. Also a very cool Mystic Art. Yeah, I know what you mean about the different styles of Mystic Art too, Grail. I'm kind of two minds about it because I like how the earlier Mystic Arts do make the battles feel more dynamic and active because the Mystic Arts don't freeze things in the same way, but I mean, I also think one of the cool things about the Mystic Arts certainly is the cinematic and character-driven content of them. And I think there is something to me that's meaningful in kind of highlighting that in a way where the enemy doesn't even have agency to stop it. Ugh. Gross. Gross! Gross! Yep, that was no bueno. For real! Oh my god, let me counter even one thing and I would be happy. Yeah, I believe you, Grail. I am also happy to at least not have to deal with that. There we go. Alright. At least I got to counter off once. Dazing him a little bit. That's something. Oh my god. Yeah, just go ahead and stagger lock me so I can't counter you at all. I'm laughing it. Dude! Why was I never able to get the Wind Armatus going this effectively? I'm suspicious. It is interesting that even with Oscar and a different Malik, the Wind Armatus manifests in exactly the same way as it did for Saray and Rose. Makes me think that the elemental Armatuses are kind of these just timeless forms that are on a par for everyone who channels them. It's so good, are you kidding me? How could you not? I do appreciate its placement in the story. I think this is a wonderful capstone to the act, but yeah, I can share in the frustration of it. No doubt about that. Alright. I think we got him on the ropes. Finally. I'm gonna say that and then he's gonna pull up like 10 Mystic Arts like that damn Dark Turtles did. I'm still not over that, if anyone's curious.
Oscar, stop! This has gone far enough!
No, it hasn't. You people hurt my sister.
He's losing control of the battle! Damn it! It's turning into a dragon!
Velvet, quick! Devour that thing! Stop! He's still...
Thank you, Grail.
You killed him.
That's what it looked like to me, too.
No, he was a good kid. He gave me this pair of earrings for my birthday.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
They're family heirlooms that were supposed to go to his fiancée. But he didn't know that at the time. I told him he should give them to the woman he cares most about in the world. And you know what he did? He smiled at me and said I was that woman.
Oh, man.
So sweet. So
Oh, are you kidding me, Grail? She didn't want to kill him.
You took him away!
Her only goal was to save Oscar.
You killed my Oscar! How could you? How could you? How could you? so hurt. I'll get you all fixed up. Don't cry,
Jesus.
Oscar. You're strong. You're so strong.
This is just like Dex and Alice. With all of the heartbreak. Oh my god. I might have to write something looking at those moments just side by side. I feel that same sense of just hollow loss.
Teresa. Oscar.
Yeah, I don't think Velvet had wanted to kill Oscar either.
And we didn't even get the
Yeah,
Therion
they were
we
just
came
looking for the
for.
Therion. And I think to just let the siblings have each other without
Oscar
involving the
came at him
broader Abby.
first.
I had to. It was for Luffy.
No, for sure, we're on the same page.
Brother.
Wow. There's never a good time to see yourself as the man on whom you swore the revenge around which you've architected your entire life for the last 3 years. But I guess if it had to happen at any time, at the climax of the second act is probably the perfect moment. Yeah, that is a good point, Grail. I'd be interested in watching that back and thinking more about what is it that motivated Teresa to really fight them in the first place. I wonder how much of it was her versus the influence of the demonic aspect of the Therion after she merged with it, because she did seem to go very quickly from a rational, level-headed nature of telling the party, this will give you a way to get your Therion and get out of here, and I can protect my brother, and we can all be happy, to then almost like making the leap of logic that unless I take care of this party here and now, they're going to keep coming after us and we're never going to be safe. Which, given what we know about demons and their perspective on the world and how malevolence can corrupt the way you think about things, I wouldn't be surprised if, her choice to draw strength from the Therion also corrupted her perspective in the way that did set things off. Honestly, I'm interested to see where all the Innominat stuff goes, because I don't remember that much of it, but yeah, don't think Ultima isn't in my head a little bit. There's something interesting too. This might be worth keeping in mind as we go on further. I mean, certainly it's interesting in the first place to think of Teresa choosing to take up the role of Therion as a kind of prophylactic to protect her brother, whereas the other humans we've seen who have been Therionized, like Kamoana and Medusa, sort of collapse into that state of being after losing someone. So there's that interesting point of anti-parallelism too. But then also, I think they go over it pretty quickly, but I think it's interesting, especially with all of the merged half natures that we see in that last battle, with Teresa fusing with Therion and Oscar fusing with his Malik, to also remember that, I mean, we joked at the beginning, yeah, they're siblings, but they have this weird kind of romantic energy. But we did get an explanation that they're really half siblings, because Oscar is part of the proper royal lineage and Teresa was born out of wedlock. And so that idea that with something like a half sibling, it almost becomes a choice and an expression of the relationship to either recognize them as someone who really is your sibling or see them as someone who isn't really related to you. And so that idea that like Oscar and Teresa actively chose this bond for each other, with each other, and used that as kind of the moral center of their universe. I think that's an interesting way of giving us another lens into how people not only choose to take on different natures themselves, but also see different things in each other, which of course was a big theme leading up to this too, in terms of Teresa rethinking how she conceives of Malix, and Eleanor reflecting on how she's come to not stop it's not that she's stopped hating demons, but rather, while she still hates them, she also sees them in other ways. So that capacity to see people in multiple aspects, I think, is nicely tied together by the relationship between Oscar and Teresa at the end of this act. Yeah, it's some kind of special. I don't want to again use this idea of a spiritual love like I've talked about with Luke and Tyr, Grail, because it's certainly not quite the same thing as that either. But it strikes me as something too, which is like it transcends the sibling bond. It's also not quite romantic. I think, to the point that I was just trying to make, the best handle I could get on it right now would be to talk about it as this kind of chosen platonic love for someone else, where you don't have to see them that way, but you choose to bring them into your family because they're important to you. Kind of like, what people refer to as a chosen family versus your biological family. I think for me, that's part of what gives it that special sense to it. Yeah, it doesn't feel like weird, inappropriate, like romance between half siblings or something like that. It feels very chaste, but in a way that is also like more than siblings. Like they really love each other in a way that is beyond a mere sibling bond, and not even identical with the sibling bond, because again, only half siblings. Ugh, wow.
They're dead. No.
The heartbeat is back.
Just dead. I killed them. I'm the same as Artorias. I killed her brother before her very eyes.
It's not the same.
It is the same! And I didn't have any choice!
Oh, absolutely. It's all about brothers and sisters. But also mothers and daughters. Lots of different family relationships. That's a really interesting moment, not to interrupt this great sequence, but that happened so quickly, I almost blinked and missed it. You have this idea, because we're clearly inside Velvet's mind, and she's having this breakdown, that the heartbeat we hear that I called out is hers, but then it's when she accidentally touches and kills Laphicet that the heartbeat stops, with this idea being, it's almost as if the dream is telling us without coming out and saying it, that really what has been keeping Velvet going this whole time is not even so much her revenge quest against Artorias, but more this desire to redeem or like spiritually save Laphicet after the fact, which was why she was so willing to buy into the fantasy of a ball, and also why it was so devastating for her to find herself in the same position as Artorias with what just happened with Oscar. This idea that by seeing herself in the position Artorias was, she's losing her internal compass for directing herself through life and finding a meaning to do anything. Her heart has effectively stopped.
There's nowhere left to run.
Nowhere for you or for me.
Nowhere left.
How many times, Artorias, have we arrived here together?
You all right?
I ate too much. That's all.
They were close. They supported each other ever since they were children.
I just did to them what they were going to do to us.
And who will killing them save?
The soul of my murdered brother.
Whatever
Whatever the case, we messed up the Therion part of the plan. They're probably making a new one as we speak.
There's no time to waste. Let's go back to the port and start our search.
Yeah. I had to do it. All of it.
Velvet.
I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. I
Take a look at
felt
this.
malevolent. I know, I was worried for a second there that I wasn't going to pull it out. Thankfully, knock on wood, I don't want to toot my own horn as someone who has played a Tales game or two, but when I don't make the effort of playing it on an actually challenging difficulty, it's few and far between are the fights that I need to retry. Unless they start with D and end in oidles!
Scout ship setting sail.
What did they mean by what? The rapping stew or the music? Two very important questions. Alright, we're going back this way. I'm gonna guess we can't quick jump. Oh, we can quick jump. Great.
I never expected that Velvet would actually eat Teresa.
What else could she do? We never expected that Teresa would be a Therion either.
Velvet and Lady Teresa weren't so different. They both loved their brothers.
Not everyone loves their brothers.
Oh, failed Oscar.
Dead.
That's different than the Oscar we fought?
So where does this leave us?
It seems we must search for the new Therion that will fill the void left by Teresa.
Well,
It
color
won't
me
be
confused
easy to
then.
find another who could become a Therion.
Then it won't be easy for the Abbey either. And they still may not be able to awaken Innominat. We still can't assume that we're in the clear, though.
No, we can't.
If it takes time for the Therion to be reborn, this could be our chance to strike.
Whatever happened, the seven Therion's ties have been severed from Innominat. But we won't know if the Empyrean has been weakened until we find out for ourselves.
I can try and see if I can sense the new Therion. So let's go back to the prison island first. But I think Velvet needs time to rest.
Right. If we're gonna take down Artorias, she has to be there with us.
Oh, I just clearly can't read. I thought you meant there was another boss in the game named Failed Oscar. Boy, I wish I had noticed that while we were fighting him. I'm glad that you called that out, Grail. What an interesting thing to call him. Well, and I suppose he was sent there to be a steward of the Therion, and at that point, Velvet and company had already defeated Teresa, so I guess in that sense of his being an instrument of the Abbey, he quite directly had failed at his mission.
First mate, there's trouble. We got an emergency message from Port Zexon. A ship carrying dozens of exorcists just set sail for Titania.
Oh, Jesus.
They have orders to eliminate the Lord of Calamity.
Yeesh. Looks like the hideout's not so hidden.
Act
after
3
all.
starting out with a bang.
It wasn't me. I didn't tell them anything. Then you won't have any problem helping us. We're rescuing the Therions.
Of course not. I won't let them take Kamoana again.
Wait, that information came from the Bloodwings?
No, from a peddler I often do business with.
Exorcist operations like this are usually kept a closely guarded secret. And you're telling me a regular civilian knew about
Misinformation?
Think it's a trap?
Trap or not, we don't have a choice.
Our enemies
Disinformation.
know the odds. If they've set a trap for us, that means they think they can win.
The Armatus!
Yes, they're likely to throw armatized exorcists at us.
Even your demon arm can't eat Armati. You might just have a real problem on your hands.
If I can't devour them, then we kill them.
Yeah, if we overcome the Armati, we can win.
Like with Oscar. But his armatus was still incomplete.
From what I could gather, if the Exorcist remains armatized for too long, their Moloch will turn into a dragon. But to prevent these dragons from running wild, Melchior embedded a self-destruction art in both Exorcist and Moloch.
To think they would go that far.
This is all just conjecture, of course, but we should prepare ourselves as best we can. Just make sure not to leave any regrets behind.
So the armatization itself, I guess, was the art that Oscar was embedded with. Took me longer than I would have hoped to put that together. Magilu, I think it's time you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Gro. Yeah, that's interesting, Grail. I almost would have thought if they wanted to emphasize that aspect of Oscar, they would have called him Incomplete Oscar, which also would have been a great JRPG name. And they used that term incomplete. And you also use that term incomplete in referring to the nature of his armatus. Whereas failure, to me, that speaks more to his mission, but potato, tomato. Oscar is a sad character with a lot of pathos either way. White bunny ears! Fantastic. We would also accept Hollow Oscar, although maybe that would make him sound more like a Kingdom Hearts boss at that point. So I do want to forge ahead, and I know we have a skit, but since we are now clearly in the resolution of Act 2, moving quickly into Act 3, interesting, I think, to take a moment to do some real live reflection on the first 2 acts, and then, of course, we can sit on it and talk about it more on Friday as we get into Act 3, and then dig into it next week when poor Grail will be camping as opposed to with us. But I think the thing that is sticking out to me most obviously right now, and tell me what is, really defining the arcs for you, but thinking first and foremost through the lens of Velvet, the first arc, like we talked about, was really her trying to figure out how to fulfill this quest of revenge against Artorias. And then, like we talked about at the time, coming to grips with the idea of, what is it to live if I don't have this ability to, realize my vengeance against Artorias. And then, like we were talking about in that last dream sequence in the heartbeat scene, and this horrifying insight that Velvet had with the death of Oscar, the turn and the insight in Act 2, at least right now, with the climax of Act 2, for me, seems to be her realization that more than anything all along, it was about Laphicet for her and making sense of how to, rectify his loss and also sort of, cleanse herself of the guilt associated with that loss. So it really wasn't about Artorias and his actions per se all along. So it's interesting, and like you said, Grail, there's been so much of this game, especially in the second act, focusing on a variety of intimate family relationships, whether that's siblings or sibling affection or sibling loss or mothers and daughters. And so it'll be interesting to see how that evolves in the third act, where if the first act was kind of vengeance and resentment towards the brother-in-law figure, and then the second act was seeking redemption for the brother, then is the third act going to be focused more on Velvet figuring out who she is herself? Is it going to be more about figuring out healthy relationships with these other family members rather than just trying to fix the past? But that seems to be those relationships and what Velvet wants to do with it and how she's setting her intentions in the world according to those relationships seem to be the most central through line to me right now, which is only further being interrogated with how out to sea, no pun intended, she is now in the wake of everything that happened with Oscar and Teresa.
I really can't fathom what the Abbey is doing.
Even if they did let us know on purpose, why would they leave us be? I would have expected them to press the attack against us.
Even if their aim is to capture our...
We should revisit that, Grail. Let me think for a second. We'll talk about it after this skit.
Too many holes.
What if we decided to abandon Kamoana and the others? They'd be no closer to capturing Velvet.
Do they actually want the Therions back?
What are you saying?
Why did Melchior place that illusion on a ball to lure Velvet in?
That was so he could capture her, right?
And in case he couldn't capture her, he could kill her and create another Therion.
Okay, so if securing the Therions is so important to them, why would they throw Orthrus to the winds?
That's a puzzler. Melchior was right there, and he didn't try to protect Orthrus at all.
I don't understand it. It's like they're toying with us.
I don't see any point in that either. They must know we won't give up.
Actually, that could be close to the mark. What if they're just trying to rattle us? Everything would fit, including the assault on Titania.
Whatever's going on, I don't think we're going to like it.
Oh, I'm so excited to see this unfold. I kind of want to just forge ahead. Well, you tell me what you're thinking, Grail. Here's one thing that's kind of interesting to me right off the bat, because I've been thinking a lot about that discussion and kind of debate that we had kicking off Act 2. I think one thing that's interesting to me, and I don't know whether this speaks to the characters being a reflection of aspects of Velvet or not, but I do feel like in some ways, almost all of the other characters have made a lot more progress in being just self-assured and aware of what it is they're trying to do in the world and who they are, whereas Velvet seems much more burdened by the malevolence that's being generated by her past and her like inability to adjudicate her past and that trauma with her present. Like we've seen Laphicet come into his own and say, hey, I don't want you to refer to me as Laphi. I'm my own person, even to the point where he's trying to like heal the relationship with his original oppressor, Teresa. We've had Eleanor really come to a resolution and understanding that, yeah, you know, I don't really understand what the Abbey is about. I want to figure out how to be someone who stands on her own principles, and I want to be okay with being a little lost and figuring that out. Magilou is still a fucking question mark, but I remember we will be getting more clarity on that soon. And, you know, Rokuro, we've learned more about his past, and I think he's become kind of more settled and resolute with it since having the opportunity to confront Shigure again and also get the support from Kurogane. And Aizen, I mean, like we talked about much earlier in the game, he's not so much wrestling with something he needs to understand and more so with just the reality of his nature and what was put upon him by the Reaper's curse, I think. But he's certainly been able to help the group and teach through his own experience and perspective on the world more so as the game has gone on. So I almost, as I'm talking through it now, I wonder whether one interesting way to reframe your question, Grail, as we move into the third act is to think of the other characters in the party less as reflections of Velvet and more as lessons that Velvet ought to learn. So, I mean, we can play around with that as we get further into it, but right off the bat, thinking about something like Laphicet in terms of, oh, you should figure out how to be your own person, because if you're just hanging on defining yourself by the other people, like your family members and the relationships that you had with them, you're never really going to be present in your own life, nor in those relationships. And with Eleanor, right, like you should be willing to like help other people work through their trauma, because that's going to help you heal your own trauma and get more clarity on what made you the way you are, the way she's kind of processing the loss of her own mother through everything that happens with Kamoana and Medusa and everything like this. So yeah, I imagine we could extend that to all of them as we go through this a little bit more. Yeah, because I think it's so interesting. I think that's something you could do a whole analysis on for the Tales of Praxis series too, and maybe I will at some point. Like, what are the different roles that the main character in the party is playing relative to their overall party? Because it's certainly not the same thing in every game. And like I said, I'll be talking about the role of Yuri in Tales of Vesperia, he functions with respect to the other party members in a way that is hugely different than someone like, say, Stan in Tales of Destiny, or even like Luke in Tales of the Abyss, or pick whatever other example you want, right? And so maybe one way to think about Berseria there is not even just, Velvet is the central character, blah, 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 but her struggle to process her trauma and figuring out how to get out of that pit, like the metaphor attached to the pit she's literally caged in Titania at the start of the game, is kind of the central struggle of the story. And the path to learn how to do that is through seeing all of these individuated portraits that make up the little mosaic pieces of the answer, and all of the other characters she comes to know along the way. Yeah, let's keep that in our minds as we go on here and see whether any of the other characters have things to teach Velvet to help her out of this hole.
So, Eleanor, about that Armatus Oscar used, was that something the Abbey has been working on for a while?
I was never involved in weapons development or anything like that, but I did hear of a secret research division. Word was that they were deciphering ancient scrolls and books coming from every corner of the Empire. Apparently, Teresa knew something of the ancient tongue, and they called her in to help from time to time.
Did she work on Inominat's book?
I was never privy to any of the details, but I think the books were mostly about controlling Malachim.
Well, that Siegfried thing of Zavid's is some kind of power control device, right?
The Abbey probably learned about Siegfried in one of those books, and realized they could use it to armatize.
So Melchior tracked Zavid down and stole the formula. Makes sense.
It was
It's all coming
the
together.
Armatus.
Will Ifrid be alright?
Complete or not, they've seen that they can use the Armatus in battle. They have no use for him anymore.
Let's get back to Titania, Eisen. I'll help out with
I
the
hope
ship.
we get more Zavid before all said and done.
Let's set sail.
And that reminds me, I know we spent time earlier when we were first learning about the Abbey comparing them to fascist regimes and Nazis and similar forces in the real world, and the way that we're hearing about the Abbey leveraging ancient lore to try to create this superpower to even further cement their authority reminds me a lot of, some of the history, some of the legends you hear about the Nazis similarly trying to collect everything from mystic artifacts to the most recent scientific innovations to anything that could give them an unholy scrap of power. Scary how true to life some JRPG enemies can be, my friends. Alright, I'm gonna say we have 5 minutes left, but I'm so into this, I want to at least take us to Titania. And if we have to interrupt things once we've kicked things off there, then so be it. It'll give us all the more to roll into on Friday. I mean, I think that's one of the more, accurate, quotable comparisons that we've had on the stream so far, Grail. More so than Ocarina of Time being Tales of Vesperia or whatever the other comparison I made was. That can't be right. I always compare Ocarina of Time to Tales of Graces just because of the time jump. But I feel like you quoted me as saying Vesperia. Anyway, all the more to say, this one makes a bit more sense in my head. I'm telling you, it's one of those documents that'll become only more interesting and wild in ways we can't even imagine as we continue on with Tales of Praxis. We're really only halfway or so through the game, so oh my goodness, I know us well enough at this point to fully believe that we have some good quotes ahead yet.
It's an urgent message. Let him know that they'll be arriving at Titania.
Timestamps or it didn't happen, Grail. I'm going to erase it from the history. It was me, Magilu.
I'm surprised I didn't sense it. There is a gesh on you, interfering with our pact. Well played, Melchior.
That slime.
Impressive. That old man must have planned all of this from the very moment you escaped me.
Oh, no, I remember. It was because I was comparing Heldolf with Ganondorf, which that I think is an apt comparison, but certainly not enough to say they're the same game.
Even my imprisonment in Titania and my encounter with Velvet. All calculated down to the minute. Huh, nice.
Forgive me, Miss Mogulu. There was no way I could fight against Lord Melchior's arts.
I don't care. I don't care about anything. And I don't care that I don't.
Magilou the Nihilist. Even more zealous than zealous. Kind of sad. Well, it's sad because, I mean, I imagine or I hope we'll learn more about this, but I mean, I feel like the better answer from those options of is Bienfu or Magilou the traitor would be Bienfu, but it also, like, I mean, the poor little dude, I kind of believe him when I say that someone so meek and little and shrimpy as he couldn't possibly, like, resist or fight against Melchior. Like, literally wouldn't be able to overcome that influence on him. So I almost feel like it's more a case of, you know, of Melchior using him as a kind of puppet than Bienfu really being a traitor. Like, oh, I don't know what a good example is. Not Leon and Hugo, because this is a stronger magical influence than that. That's, I mean, Hugo is kind of more sadistic, but also more more instrumental than the kind of magical art that Melchior is deploying. But something like that, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh no! You've caught me red-handed! I've been in league with the Abbey this whole time!
That's not true! I'm the one you want!
We were listening. We heard it all.
Boring. Fine then, do with us what you will.
It's not like I trusted you to begin with. Spy or no spy, this was inevitable. Besides, you're not sorry. Make yourself useful and fight for us.
You're good at this cruelty that's also compassion thing, aren't you?
I just don't have the time to deal with you two. After this whole business is over with, I'll devour you. If that's what you want.
Your life belongs to brave Vesperia now.
Hey, Velvet, tell me, what does it feel like to hate?
That's a great line.
You? Is it agony? Does the searing fire of your hatred empower you to feel? Does it give your life meaning where there was none?
Land ho! Titania! There's an Abbey ship in the front.
Yeah, and that would be an interesting study too, Grail, because so many traders in the Tales series, but traders in
if you want your answer,
interestingly different ways in different games.
See at the very moment I kill Artorias.
It'd be cool to see how different games use that trope to express very different kinds of themes and portraits of very different characters.
Still the crow caws defiantly. You really know how to vex me.
So, you're using the forbidden arts. This has to be Melchior's doing.
Stop! I'm the one you want! The Lord of Calamity.
That again? What a melodramatic name.
It's what you're called by the scores of citizens whose lives you've ruined. Face the enormity of your sins.
What idiocy.
Ha! We'll carve the weight of your sin from your flesh. We are the wings of the divine will.
This seems like something safe that'll end super well.
You're mad at us.
As expected.
Cheap imitations of the genuine article. Alright. We'll play through this and then we'll wind things down. That is interesting. Well, we know that Lila is represented as the Lady of the Lake and kind of the keeper of the sword and the stone, and also, at least for some shepherds, their unique guide. So I wonder if that is a gesture at a sense in which she and her relationship with the world is unique relative to the other elements. And it is the flame of purification, so it might make sense that that's limited to being accessible by the shepherd versus just any old exorcist. Jesus.
So this is
Vaporized.
They destroyed themselves.
Just as I expected.
The Abbey. They know exactly what they're doing.
Grimoire, where are the Therions? Couldn't tell you. They came out of nowhere, and before I knew it, we were all split up.
How's the book?
Nearly done, but I'm still working on the critical passages at the very end. All of you, get on board the Von Eltia. I'll find the Therions.
Oh? You really think we can make it past a horde of armatized exorcists?
Stay behind. I don't care.
Don't touch that!
You don't have to do this alone. We're all in this together. And I promise I'll protect you, Velvet.
You'll protect me. Long ago, Laffy said the same thing. But that sort of idealistic drivel will kill you. Make your worthless promises. They won't change reality. Look what happened to Laffy. Dead. Murdered. And I couldn't protect him either.
Yeah, definitely interesting,
In
Graham.
the end, no matter how much he cared for me, my only brother, his life torn away from him. Oh, it must have hurt.
Velvet.
You worry about yourself, Laffy said. That's an order.
An order.
We have to keep Innominat out of the picture, so that I can kill Artorias.
Also an interesting contrast here where after she failed to get revenge against Artorias at the end of Act 1, she almost immediately started opening up to other people and grasping for potential other reasons to keep going in life. Like right after that, it's the mission to protect Laffy in the Earth Pulse. And now that she's been hit with the reality of really being driven and supported by her feelings and pain over Laffy all along, she's almost coping in the exact opposite way, where now she's closing herself off and reconceptualizing herself as a killing machine and issuing orders to Fee, almost as the same kind of defense mechanism, but executed in the opposite way.
Let's go. We'll push the enemy back and keep an eye out for the Therions.
All right. Well, we played a few minutes late, but I also started later than that. I would keep going, but I'm going to be respectful of everyone's time. Grail, my friend, pleasure to see you. I'm glad we were able to do this, especially since you're not going to be around for a little bit. We will miss you. Enjoy the camping. Collect many great stories. of your actual time and inspiration for further fiction as well. Pottery, great to see you hanging. I will be looking forward to you holding down the fort on Friday with the other adventurers in our real life JRPG party. Wow, what an end to the second act. As I said, we have a lot to go on in terms of thinking about how it's already in conversation with the first act and how that might set us up with many different things to wrestle with or potential directions in which to go in the third act. So I know I'm going to take some time to just sit and digest that. I invite you to do so as well. And as I continue to also chisel away at my Vesperia and Destiny study, the next thing that I'll publish, I will also definitely be putting some more thought into where we are and where we're going in Berseria to maybe set the stage for Friday before we dive back into Act 3 and drive the game to its core insights, the final revelations leading to its true conclusion, all the good things that Act 3 of a great JRPG are fantastic for. Are you kidding? I would bring the PS3 with me everywhere if I had the means to do so, Grail. That's fantastic. Well, yeah, definitely let me know how that goes because I'm in it for the story of your continued struggle and effort there as well. All right, friends. Well, this was a fantastic night. Thank you for the thoughtful gaming and close reading. We had so much content to get into here, so this was a great stream for that. Thinking about boss-oriented storytelling, twists of character relationships, everything in between. A wonderful way to cap off a Wednesday. And until Friday, when we'll dig even further in, think well, game well. You have a great one too, Grail. I'll see you back here at who knows what point in Berseria, but yeah, stay tuned as you can, and I'll look forward to seeing you back in the chat as well. Everyone else, same time, Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Be here. Welcome to Act 3 of Tales of Berseria. This has been Tales of Praxis. Cheers, friends. You have a good night.